Awesome, awesome. It's so funny because I am like, I don't remember how I met Shauna.
It was I know somebody Houston.
That's right, with Elizabeth.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
You just felt like one of those people that I have known for so long. And I'm like, well, how do I know her? Beautiful. I love
No,
it,
it
love it,
took
love
me a
it.
second too. It's like, all right, I know her. I've known her.
Ah, how
Started going through all
funny.
the like,
That is
oh
too
wow.
funny. Yes, yes. How many people do we have like that in our networks? I am going
True.
to bear with me because so here's the thing. I started reading your book. Well, when we were supposed to meet prior? About a month
It
or two
was
months ago.
yeah. It was
Yeah, yeah. So I started reading it then feverishly, like I was in it, and then I stopped for a month because I'm not a reader, honestly. So and so
yeah.
I got back into it, and when I tell you, I literally just finished it last night, and
Yeah.
oh my God, because that's me. I'm up into the last moment. But when I tell you, you sent me to bed with tears. But yeah, okay, so we'll get all into that. I definitely want, and I said that because I have notes back from then. This is October, actually.
It
Um,
was. Yeah, that's
Yes,
right.
I have notes from then, so I got to make sure I piece all my notes because I just have so many great thoughts. But let me take a pause here. I do want to. Oh, definitely want to turn that off. Give me 1 second. All right. Give me 1 second, Shauna. Let me let my
Sure.
kiddo know. She's the only call that can come through, or they are the only calls that can come through. All right. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
All right. So, Miss Shauna, so happy to have you on, Shauna Ross. Let me do a quick introduction. So, everyone, this is Ronaya with Lucra, and I have an amazingly talented, beautiful guest on with me today, Miss Shauna Ross. Um, I'll tell you, starting getting into this, I actually just told my girlfriend that I am a little nervous because you're the first guest that I now, after reading your book, I know everything about you. And I'm just kidding. So typically my interviews are incredibly explorative, right? But with this, I'm like, there's so much I want to dive into as far as what I read, and ultimately I really want to make sure that we stay in line with what Lucra is really all about. So Lucra
Sure.
is about more of all the best things in life, going after what you desire, and basically living that life where you invest in yourself so that you can reap the benefits of that in a very abundant way. And that's, I always equate that to health, wealth, and happiness. So I always look for individuals who are living a life where they are choosing happiness despite the odds, despite the obstacles, but despite the stories like yours, and they find spaces of happiness, but they also create and welcome that in their lives. And so that's one of the reasons when I read the fact that you had written this book, and immediately when I saw the title Tribalist, I was like, okay, I get this. I get this completely. So I couldn't wait to dive into it. But yeah, without further ado, I do want to introduce you guys to Miss Shauna Ross. She is an author. She's also the owner and a fitness instructor with her own company, Shana Ross Fitness, right? And you've been doing
Yes.
that for quite a bit of time. So something we
Hmm.
have in common. Um, and yeah, so I want to just have everyone start. I want to have you start with a little bit about what the book that she's written is called Tribalist. And if you would, just give us a little background on what this book is all about.
Well, there are actually several themes in it, but the two most prevalent ones are adoption, and not only adoption, but a subset of adoption, transracial, transcultural adoption. And then the other is nature versus nurture.
I love it.
And yeah, and because that's a big debate in the adoption circles is how much of each is
Yeah.
there usually in an adopted person. And I don't think that's a black or white you know issue answer. I think there's a whole lot of shades of gray in there,
Yes, yes.
um, because every person is different. Every person is going to be influenced by nature, but they're also going to be influenced by nurture. And I think we're
Absolutely.
all born with um, a personality that's
Yeah,
going to dictate which one of those shows up the most.
absolutely.
Um, yeah, so I don't think it's one of those things that science can say, well, there's probably going to be uh, 70% nurture and,
Right,
30% nature.
exactly.
There's just
Exactly.
no way of doing that, because I've talked to
Absolutely.
other adoptees and adoptees who were adopted from a different culture, a different race, into a different race. And some of them have absolutely no desire to find out more about their genetic, their birth roots, which
Yeah,
is great, which is wonderful. I, on the other hand, never felt that way. I felt like I never belonged from the very beginning. It
yeah.
wasn't that as a young child, it wasn't that I was made to feel that I wasn't loved or welcomed. I just never felt
It was
like I was
innately
in the
nagging.
right place. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What
Yeah.
I gathered is that it was innately just nagging at you, and it was
Oh,
something
it
that you
was.
literally couldn't do anything about. So, which is
No,
beautiful.
no,
Yeah,
I,
it's
I really
beautiful.
couldn't.
So I have to
Uh,
tell you this. This actually made me laugh. So I'm reading your story and I'm listening and honing in on your childhood version of yourself. And I know you kept telling me there's something about me. I can tell I don't belong in this space and I don't, this is not my roots. And there's a spirited side of me, this creative side of me, this athletic side of me. And I kept getting all of this. And I was like, she sounds like a Scorpio to me. That might just be it. So it wasn't until
and
late
I am.
I know. So it wasn't until later in the story I find that you're a Scorpio, and I was like, "Whoop there," because my girlfriend's a Scorpio. So that was one of the things I thought was too funny. But so
There it is.
tell us, I love it. So tell us a little bit about the childhood version of Shauna and how you got to a point in the story. You talk a little bit about how you were meeting these pieces of yourself, and it was because of your probably more of the external experiences with classmates, and of course the first being I don't look like any of these people
Right.
that are in my in my city, in my town. But other than that, just kind of the spirit of who you were that didn't really match any of your family members. And how was that for you in terms of, I guess, feeling lonely or feeling what kind of feelings did that bring about for you?
Yeah, lonely is a big one. A really big one. And it
Yeah.
wasn't because I wasn't surrounded by family, because I was. I grew up in deep, deep East Texas, very racist, very bigoted, very white.
Mm,
The little community I grew up in, called Hudson, was known as an all white community, an all white school.
yeah.
And I started school in '66, so you know, right
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
right in the middle of before everything really started blowing up.
Yeah.
And growing up with the whole segregation movement starting, whereas Hudson was untouched by that. We
Yeah.
were completely untouched by segregation, and that was mainly because people of color did not move into Houston, into
Yeah.
Hudson. It was known as you don't live
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you just didn't. So, and I was very dark as a child because I stayed outside. I didn't know what living inside meant. I didn't care to live inside.
Yeah.
And so, as a kid, I was one of the darkest. Well, I was the darkest kid in my class.
Wow.
And so, I stood apart that way. My features were not typically Anglo. So even though I am half Anglo, half white,
Yeah.
um, there was still a difference. And really, the racial genetics of that part of the country
Yeah.
are generational.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it's handed down, from
Wow.
generation to generation, and that's how people choose to live. That's how they're comfortable living. So anything that is different is always, given the side eye, and
Yeah. Yeah.
whether that's One of these
Yeah.
things is not like the
Like
other.
the exactly, exactly.
And I
You're
was one of those things.
you were definitely it. And that's brings me to my next point. Everything about your life, I mean, reading throughout the book was incredibly polarized. Like you were, I mean, everything from where you grew up, the fact that you were adopted and you were brought up by, Caucasian parents, the fact that you were the darkest kids in the environment that you were in, the fact that you soon to be, learned that you were gay, and just everything
Mhm.
about you was just incredibly polarized as far as, so you having to find the gray in this very black and white life that you were living in, so to speak, right? You had to create
Mhm.
the gray. And it brings me to this quote that I really loved. It said, I could disappear for hours knowing that she'd never miss me. I could immerse myself in my world of make believe without fear of being discovered. And I love that because it really describes a lot about how you had to navigate. You had to be imaginative, and I imagine the pool of what was out there for you, and probably mainly your mother. But that pool is what really kept you going. Tell me a little bit about how you created that space for yourself and what that was like.
But for the longest, it was through country music.
Okay, okay.
Because I know. Hang on.
I would have taken you for a country music girl. All right.
I'm not anymore. It's it's the only form of music I do not listen to.
You and me both. Okay.
The only form of music.
Absolutely.
But growing up, I didn't know there was another form.
Ah, I see. I
That's
see.
that's all that was in my home. Um,
Love it. Yeah.
we list, just the old fashioned transistor radio in the kitchen,
Yeah.
tuned to, and I still remember the call signals of the radio station. It was KSPL in Diboll, Texas.
Oh my goodness. So you said it's country
Uh-huh.
music that got you through. Was it the stories through it? Was it that what was it
Yeah,
that yeah.
it
Okay,
was the
good.
stories of it, and it was the diva personalities. So
Ah,
I grew up with Tammy Wynette.
okay, okay.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Dolly Parton,
Yes, diva.
Loretta Lynn,
Okay.
you know, and Loretta Lynn, if you go back and you listen to her early music,
Hmm.
Loretta Lynn is basically the first woman in country music that stood up and said, "No, ma'am,
Ah,
I am
to
not. I am not going to do that. You're not going to treat me that way."
love it.
You
So
know, yeah,
empowering. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
very empowering.
Love
Um,
it.
that's she told her life through her music, and was
Beautiful.
probably the most brilliant early songwriter to do that. As
Love
time went
it.
on, Tammy Wynette would, certainly give a lot of hints about what was going on with her and George Jones, which, there's a big mini series on right now called George and Tammy
Okay.
on,
Okay.
I don't know, Netflix or something like that.
Something.
But anyway, it tells the story of Tammy Wynette and George Jones and all the drama there. But Loretta Lynn was really the first one just to say, yeah, this isn't
I
really
love
how
it.
it's going to work.
I love
And
it.
I I would listen to those lyrics, and I would love it. In one part of the book I talk about, we had this old, just raggedy pool table in the garage,
Yeah. And
and it wasn't any good for playing pool because it was unlevel. And I talked about how the felt on it was, just gnarly and nasty. And
yeah.
so I used it as a stage. And, I would lip sync with that pool cue stuck into the corner pocket and use it as my microphone. And, I would create that whole
I
world.
love it. I love it.
And
And
it was always to Tammy Wynette and, Loretta Lynn, Dolly Parton. It was always those songs that I would sing. And
I love
it
it.
that really kind of kicked it all
That's
off.
beautiful. And I often talk about how we have to collect the tools in life to shape us, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes those tools are people, resources,
Right.
tools. Of course, that sounds maybe a little offensive, but we get the point. So the idea is that, you have these these mechanisms that you use along the way to help create this personality so that for survival, really. And
Yeah. Oh,
so,
yeah.
yeah, for
It is.
survival. And for you, it was through the personalities and the lyrics and the voices of these country singers that helped kind of create this new personality that you were creating, which was badassery, someone that is very confident and very determined and has, wants to pave their own lane. And so, as I'm listening to that, I can see now how they contributed to that. What other
Mhm.
or whom else was instrumental for your development in that way along the way?
Well, it's a really big leap from one to the other, but it truly was from country music to Broadway.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah, that is a leap.
Yeah.
Beautiful,
I know. It's
beautiful.
like, was there stuff in between there? It's like, nope. It was just kind of
Just
leap
leap.
over everything else. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. Awesome.
Um, when I was in first grade, my mother had a very good friend who was also a teacher at the school that I went to. The school was very small. Everybody knew everybody.
Mhm.
The teachers who had, you know, who taught there taught generations. I had some teachers who taught my parents who were now teaching me.
Right,
So
right,
it
right.
it was just very, very small little microcosm of a world. But one of my mother's very good friends had these two brilliant, I mean, brilliant daughters, and their mother, being an educator, recognized that in them and sent them to the best schools. They ended up going to the Hockaday Girls School in Dallas. I don't know if you're familiar with that,
Never
but
heard of
it's
that one.
yeah, it's a very exclusive school, but not so much in status as an economical status, but educational status. I
Okay.
mean, they worked you. They expected a lot out of you. And
Okay.
one of the girls went on to grow up and become an international
Hmm.
economist.
Got it.
And the other went to work for the State Department and literally worked all over the world in the different U.S. embassies, and was posted in all all nations. It was just an amazing career.
Yeah.
They were much older than I was, but I still, got to be around them and looked up to them.
Beautiful.
And the younger of the two girls got involved in theater as
Mm,
a very young, well, let's say just preteen teen. And my parents took me to Lufkin. I can't believe I can still remember this. An actual play. I mean, an actual play in Lufkin,
hmm.
which was almost unheard of, but there was, a little community theater, and they were doing The Miracle Worker.
Hmm.
And my mom's friend, her daughter, the one who went to work for the State Department, was playing Helen Keller. And I remember it just being the most mesmerizing thing I had ever seen. I
Yeah.
was transfixed at 6 years old by
Yeah.
what I was seeing, going on. And I can
Yeah.
remember walking out of there that night thinking, that's
That's it.
what I'm going to do.
I
I,
love it. I love it. I love it. And you know what's so beautiful about that, Shanna? We're talking about this nature versus nurture. And and you had in your writings, you had a tendency to paint such a picture about your parents that had you kind of like, but the other part was like they loved her the best way they could, and the best way they
yes,
could, and the best way they knew how. But when you mentioned these little nuggets of things that they added and they were introduced you to, whether it was the horseback riding or it was the playwright, I mean, watching the play, things like that, that ultimately contributed to the Shana being, the being
exactly.
that is beyond, the Navajo family and beyond this family. It's that being that was being fed, which almost goes to the destiny of who you are. So everything that transpired being because Shauna had to become the person Shauna is going to be, is today kind of thing. So at least that's
Right.
where my mind goes when I think about you having that introduction to that based on in this very tumultuous situation. And it's so, again, very polarized because the picture that you painted was your parents were both very, I guess, linear. in their thinking and in their beliefs,
Mhm.
but again, loved you as best as they could. So it's beautiful to hear that come out of that. Yeah,
It eh, it's very confusing.
can
Really,
imagine.
it is. It's very confusing. But like you say, it's very polarizing.
Yeah,
On one hand, um, they were everything that I didn't understand, couldn't understand. Um, why did they treat me like that? Now they never raised a hand to me
yeah,
until much 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 later.
right,
I was an adult when
right.
when the whole coming out, Lifetime TV for movie
Right, right, right. Which came
horror,
from, yeah, it came from a
yeah,
very deep, deep place. Yeah,
right,
yeah,
all of that. But up until that time, they never touched me. So,
yeah,
I was
yeah.
never abused physically or anything like that. But there was all of that. There was bullying, gaslighting, just really,
Manipulation, all of it.
yeah,
Yeah,
just all
yeah,
of that stuff. But then on the other hand,
yeah.
you know, I I'm like, I can ride a horse. I know I can ride a horse. I don't know why. Why can't you understand? I just know I can't.
That
They
was
got me a
beautiful.
horse.
And they did it. That's what I was like. That's okay. That's awesome.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Right. Now,
awesome.
my dad wanted them too. He liked them as well. But
Right.
still, that's not something that everybody just goes out and does. Now I live in a very rural part of, the
Yeah,
country, and we
yeah.
had 30 acres. So it wasn't like things had to be done to make that happen. It
Right,
was just
right.
like there was already a barn, there was already, so like, horse there,
Yeah,
food, they have 30 acres to run on. So that was, a fairly easy jump. But it, my mother barely had a high school education, yet she read poetry to me,
hmm. And when I
from
read
this,
that, yes, I
yeah.
love that.
Uh, they took me to this play. Now
Yeah,
they certainly didn't support me in my decision of that's what I'm going to do,
right, right.
but yet they still did these things that opened doors that certainly I walked through. And
Yeah,
because I did walk through them, they made an enormous difference in my life. So it's,
yeah. It's
and
interesting.
you have to take all of that into account. And we we as a society, I think, tend to take one side over the other
Absolutely.
and do the yeah, but
Yeah,
okay, yeah, that was good,
exactly, exactly,
but look at
exactly.
this. This
Yeah,
was awful. This was horrible. And I
yeah,
think if we're going to become truly fully realized human beings and have more empathy for other human beings and
absolutely.
kindness for other human beings, we have to recognize those moments in our own lives where, okay, that was bad, but let's look at
Yes.
the other side,
Yes,
you
in a
know.
different version. It's a whole totality of it all. I think it's interesting because from the sounds of it, your parents were also coming from a very polarized space, you know. And I
Hmm.
think about, even my parents, and I tell my kids, like, I'm going to be a different version of a parent than my mom was because she's coming
Right.
from the influence of whatever she came from. So her experience, especially in my community, is more from the mindset of, slave mentality and things of that. Say
Right.
she's closer to that than I am, than my kids would be, and vice, and so forth and so on. So the empathy is understanding that person was only able to do the best they could do in that moment. And sometimes the bit that they're sharing with you is the parts maybe they were longing for, or the part that
Right.
actually has that compassion for you and sees you, but they're masked so much they can't even be that person 100%. You know what I mean? So
Oh, I do.
that's what I got from reading it. It was like your mom and dad showed these moments of compassion and
Hmm.
human, because that's who they are, but because they've had so many layers of darkness, they would they would be overcome by that, right? They would be
Yeah.
overcome by that.
Yeah.
And you were
I
beautiful
mean,
to acknowledge it. Yeah.
well, you talk about, your parents were closer to slavery than you are. And
Yeah.
it's so true. I mean, my parents came from, okay, first the Depression,
Mm,
then World War II. So,
absolutely.
uh, and the
Absolutely.
fact that my father fought in the Pacific for 3 years in some of the bloodiest, most fierce
My
battles
God.
in World War II.
My God.
Now that I look back on it, I'm amazed that he was a functioning human.
There we
Um,
go. Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And
yeah.
there's some moments that you mentioned where he got really dark. And I was like, okay, that's, again, it comes from very deep seated spaces. And I believe what you represented, Shauna, was this, which is probably another thing that was kind of an antagonist to the family, or an antagonist, is that the right word? But like, or to your parents, was this incredibly free spirit that just
Mhm.
recognized who you were outside of everything, outside of all of the events and all of that, but you recognized who you were. And I think that posed as some kind of threat to your parents because they couldn't be that person, they couldn't be that free in that sense. So yeah.
I think you're exactly right because I think they were afraid for me. You know,
Yeah.
I
What
think
does
they
it
were
mean?
afraid for me. It's like
Yes.
you have to pick something. You
Yep.
have to pick something that you know you can do that's going to afford you a living. You got to find a man, you got to get married, you got to have a family because
Yeah.
that's what we do.
Exactly.
And that's
Exactly.
how we create a safe meaningful life
Predictable
and
life.
predictable life. And because I didn't want to do that. And I told them that from a very young age. Like, that's
Yeah.
no. I think they were truly afraid for me.
I think that's a
That,
great way to put it. They were afraid for
yeah,
you. And you were
yeah.
watching your mom and your dad deteriorate in a very
Mhm.
spiritual way. You were watching them break down from not having been true to themselves. What I gathered from your reading, from your book, was that you were picking up on those things. You were looking at your parents like, my mom, she's here, but she's not here. Her
Right.
life is mundane, and the only excitement she has is reading these books, these poetry and things like that, but there's nothing else. And then yet you have these as your parents telling you how you should live your life. So it's almost like, well, gosh, you're not really showing me happiness. So I don't
Yeah.
know if this is the way to go. And I just think that is so beautiful. Um,
Yeah.
so
And they weren't happy. And I'm not sure that they think that happiness was necessary
absolutely.
to live a
Absolutely.
not fulfilling life, but to live a successful is not right either.
To
Uh,
just live.
yeah,
To live.
to get up every day and not have to struggle to put food on the
Exactly.
table and things like that. I don't think they felt happiness was really a should be a big slice of the pie.
Yeah. Well, I think because, if you think traditionally, you were taught how to live. So what that means is like the mechanics of it. Like you get a job, you da da da, you da da da
Mm,
da. So you're taught literally how to live versus, you know, um, being allowed to explore and live. And that takes me to the next point. One of the things I love about reading your story, your book, was just all of the different roles you navigated through, like everything, and ultimately for me, that it first of all, it kind of validated who I am because I am very multifaceted. So I felt kind of good, like, okay, it's good that I'm going through all these spaces, but it's a really great way to
mm,
learn who you are and to learn you know, uh, I mean, to me, it's truly what living is about. But you held different job, different positions. You ran with different circles. You explored you explored everything. Um,
yeah,
and I'm gonna go
literally,
all literally. And I love it. I was like,
literally.
okay, Shauna, okay.
Uh,
Um, so one of the things that stood out for me, and I don't remember if you said this or if this was something I concluded because I made notes here. Um, but I gathered that you always said that you are beyond this world, that you felt you were that you were beyond, your circumstances. And I think that's what I feel like was really what kept you um, you would be in an environment, in a situation, and you wouldn't be of it. You would always see yourself rising up, above it and things of that nature. And I think that's really, really beautiful. Um, let me see if I can. And I'm trying not to go all. I'm trying to stay in order, but I want to be all over the place. So one of the things I noticed that we had in common is we both worked at Arthur Anderson. Yes,
Oh, did you really?
we worked at Arthur. I was like, did she really work at Arthur Anderson? You are timeless
So
because
sorry.
I know, right? I was like, I'm sure I was one of the paper shredders. Oh my God. But I had no idea. But I was thinking, I was like, you're quite timeless because I had like the references you were making for Houston and just the, the traffic announcements and things like that. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even realize you were, you were born in 59. Is that
Yeah.
were you born in 50? I was like, oh my
Yes.
God. So it's actually really interesting. I think you started at Arthur Anderson in 93. I think I had just started high
Uh,
school the next
yeah,
year. So
90. No, 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 not 90. It was 80,
oh, it was in the 80s.
early 80s,
Okay.
probably 81.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably around 81. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. It was just beautiful. I was like, oh my God, how
Back in
funny
the
is this?
day.
Back in the day. Oh
Back
my
in the
God.
day.
I was 3 years old in 81. Yep. All right. So
Yeah, it's like Prince. It's like Prince says, "Boy, I was fine back in the day."
I was a baby. Okay, awesome, awesome. So I want to dive a little bit into your coming into understanding your sexuality in this space. Because to me, all of these choices that you ultimately had to make about yourself and the bravery that went to it, that came through it with it, definitely I would say attributes to your happiness, of course, where you are today. But tell me a little bit about there were several times where you made reference to like I could just die right now, or if life was over now, I'd be okay, along those lines. And I can't imagine that because I didn't, that wasn't my time. So I decided, okay, I want to be with a woman. That's just my business, and it was okay. But
Right.
you had the most gut wrenching experience with that. Can you tell us a little bit about that suppressing and then having to discover and own it at one point?
Yeah. Well, it goes back to when we were talking uh, about how it made me feel a lot of times that I felt lonely a
Yeah,
lot of times,
yeah,
and that was just living everyday life. And when I started to truly realize, uh, you know what, I don't like these boys like these other girls do. I don't.
yeah,
This is I. I don't even understand how you're coming about this. You get all
yeah.
giggly and
This is happening for me.
yeah, it's like
Right,
that.
right.
But that's what was expected, and
Yeah,
in my mind, it was like, well, I already feel like I don't belong. Um, but and I'm lonely because of that.
yeah.
How could I ever think about something that's going to ostracize me
Even
even
further.
more? Yeah, and
Absolutely.
and make me feel even more lonely. um and then there was, of course, growing up Southern Baptist.
Mm.
And you can think of every movie you've ever seen with the old time religion, churches, fire, brimstone, hell. You're going to be cast into a lake of
Oh yeah.
fire, and yeah,
Scary stuff. Scary stuff.
yeah, 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 yeah. All of that
Yeah.
stuff. And
Yeah.
God's going to be the one that does it. It's just
Oh
like,
yeah. Yeah.
which
So
none of
how does
that ever made a lot of sense to me
yeah,
either.
yeah. But it still
Um,
played into your psyche to where you
oh
were
yeah.
in this relationship with Jack, right?
Hmm.
And it so I would like to understand better. This was someone that you were in love with.
Hmm.
And when you guys, I mean, you this was one of two relationships or just one? I can't recall. It was just one with a guy, as
Just
far as with
just
the
one. Yes.
just one.
Yeah. One major relationship with a guy. Yeah. The
Okay.
only true um serious relationship with
I
a
want
guy.
to know more about that. So, I mean, I know that, even prior to that, you had a bout where you were like, maybe I have some attraction to women. I don't know. I'm gonna leave that alone kind
Hmm.
of thing. But when you decided to pursue a relationship with Jack and you had these very deep feelings, is there any point psychologically that you were running on the idea that I have to make this work? Or was this
Hmm.
actually you being connected to this guy?
It was a little bit of both. I felt a deep connection to him, and it was because we were alike in that he was very talented. He was very theatrical. He sang, he danced, he played several musical instruments.
Mm,
Um, so we were kindred spirits where
mm.
that's concerned. And in a small place like Hudson or Lufkin, which was the big city, and where Jack grew up in Lufkin, that was that was not the norm.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, oh my gosh, I've found a kindred soul. I found someone
Capture. Yeah.
that understands this, and
Yes. Yes.
and understands when I talk with them about it and can talk back with me about it. So
Yeah.
that was that
Beautiful.
was that was just earth shattering. I
Right.
loved it. But then
Right.
the other side of it is he's a guy. I
Ah.
actually like him. Oh
Ah.
my God.
Oh, okay. What do I do with this? Yeah.
This can
Mm.
work,
Yeah.
because that hadn't happened up until then. I did date in high school, and it was just like, okay, we're on the date. How much longer before I can go home? It's like
Right.
the car's going down the driveway. Open the door. I got to
Absolutely.
go.
You got to go. I love
I
it. I
got to
love it.
go. But it wasn't like that with him. I
Wow.
had true affection for him, and
Beautiful.
and I was desperate to make it work because I felt like that was my one shot at normal, whatever,
Yeah.
what normal was taught to me to be.
Absolutely.
And I felt
Absolutely.
like he was the shot.
Yeah. So you having to make that decision, that was something that means that the other side was incredibly overwhelming. That it was like, okay, and like you mentioned in the story, which was beautiful because a lot of people don't have the discernment or the maturity to be like, okay, let me look at this picture down the line and see.
Yeah.
I get married to this guy, have kids, and then I disrupt our lives, and I say, oh my God, I'm attracted to women, and this is not okay. Um, so it was really beautiful that you were able to see that. But I mean, was it a period of time where you felt like you made, the wrong decision?
I made the wrong decision. I made the horrible decision. Why
Yeah.
did I do this?
Yeah.
And uh, especially even though my parents never really liked Jack, they didn't really like it, anyone that pulled me away from their orbit,
Gotcha. Yeah.
so to
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, after I decided that no, I had to be true to myself, and I went with Jan, who was my first long term female relationship. Up to then, it had just been playing around.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
this is fun. This
Exploring.
is great. I can acknowledge this side of my life, but I don't have to be serious about it, or make any
Yeah.
kind of commitments. And then when she and I reconnected after we had known one another in high school and actually gone to the same high school,
Yeah.
and then just out of the blue reconnected at University of Houston, which that's a big campus. There were
Yes,
30,000,
ma'am.
yeah, 30,000 students enrolled at the time that I was there, and we turn up at the exact same moment in the exact same advisor's office. Who would have ever in a million years um,
Yeah.
planned that out?
Yeah.
um, and I think the reason I was able to truly make the smart decision for my future, for Jack's future, is
Absolutely.
is because of her. I had known her. She was a brilliant human, just brilliant human.
Mm.
So smart, so intelligent, so thoughtful, kind, and uh, I'm really afraid that if it hadn't been her that we reconnected with, that I would have continued my relationship with Jack,
And it
having
would have.
fun on the side. I have a feeling he probably at some point would have asked me to marry him. He loved
Yeah.
kids. I
Probably would have
did not
kids.
want to have kids.
Yeah.
At 63 years old, I'm so happy I didn't have kids. It's
Ah!
just never been,
Yeah.
it's just never been. And I shudder to think of the heartbreak that
Yeah.
would have caused, you
Yeah.
know, for him,
Yeah.
for me. It's just, it just,
Yeah. Over a period of time.
uh,
It's so interesting. I remember reading about, reading about you and Jan, and I was thinking, oh, that must be who she's with now, her, her partner
no,
now. I know, no, no. And so
yeah.
I was like, oh, this is great that she stayed with her through all this time. But then it was interesting how and you have this beautiful way where you always show this loving regard for the person that's in your life at that time, even as you're going through even discourse, because you would make these notes. She was always super kind and and very loving and all of that. So, it confused me because I thought that was who you stayed with forever. But but now that I'm listening to you, it really makes sense that she was just important. She was just there for that instrumental pivot in your life. And it's
Yeah.
beautiful how the universe inserts people, again, tools, resources, energies, whatever you want to call it. But those pieces that are coming to your life to help you navigate. And that was
Hmm.
Jen's role in your life. She helped you make one of the biggest decisions of your life, I imagine. So what
Yeah.
sounds like it for sure. But yeah, I just think that's amazing. And having
Hmm.
the discernment to I use loosely to be obedient to what is that lesson, I guess, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. So it comes in your life for that reason, and you say, okay, this is because I tell my kids one of the things I love about them is that they actually think about their lives. They're like, I want to do this, but this is the consequence. If I do this, and they think down the line, they have the ability and the maturity to do that. I wasn't that kid. Was a fool. I was like, it feels good right now. I want it right now. And I look at them and I'm like, y'all are so smart. I didn't think about my future like that. I'm like, what happened? But again, and that's again, not thinking about not being obedient to the signs and the things that are put in your place to help you at that fork in the road. I was like, nah,
Hmm.
I'm good. But anyway,
Yeah.
I love that.
But that's very interesting, and I think it has a lot to do with the generation that we're in and where we grow up.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
grew up in the '60s with all of the racial strife,
Mm,
Vietnam starting up. And I was one of those kids that liked to watch the nightly news. I was one of those bizarre, strange humans, but you really couldn't get away from it then
yeah,
because the parents who were raising us, that's what they did.
yeah,
You watched the nightly news and then you had dinner.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and that
yeah,
was just kind of like the thing that you did.
yeah,
And eh, as a kid growing up in that time, you could not escape what was going on in the world,
yeah,
and it was crazy stuff,
yeah,
just crazy stuff. And I think it made our generation look at things as, wow, man, that is messed up. and
yeah,
and look what happens if we continue that down the road. Here are the
absolutely.
consequences of what can happen. JFK was assassinated, Martin Luther King was assassinated,
Yeah,
Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. I mean, and then the Vietnam War, and you got the body counts every night on
yeah,
the nightly
yeah.
news.
Wow.
Today X number of United States soldiers were lost in Vietnam. That stuff's heavy, and it makes you think down the road.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you know kids now, and even 20 years ago, look what was starting to happen in the news,
Mm-hmm.
and the things that they started having to look at. And I think it all has that. And
That
it's
makes
kind of like
sense.
you, that generation you went through kind of was a period of, well, we're not too
Complete.
crazy right
I'm gonna
now.
say maybe complacency. Everything's good.
it's, it's not too crazy right
Shit,
now.
I was born in the
Yeah.
wrong time. All good. That's actually a very good point. You're absolutely
Yeah.
right, though. Because one of the thoughts I had was here you are, a kid that's brought up in this home that is being, in the times where it's been fed about racism and
Mhm.
discrimination and all of that, and um, And I always wondered, and it's of course it's unique, but again, going back to nature versus nurture, you have that kid that's looking at all of this and saying, "This isn't right. This is not who I'm going to be," despite all of what's being literally fed to you as a kid and taught to you how to think and how to be and how to believe. But so is it because you were, of Navajo, of a bloodline, that you felt this rebellion against that type of belief? And, because you come from a family that's incredibly embracing and loving, and, or is it because it's just Shana, and Shana is just who this? And of course, it's probably all of the above. But it's just interesting because you think about these kids are in these homes and they grow up with these beliefs and they don't even know why, but it's just because it was fed to them. And but they don't,
Hmm.
it's not connected to them. So I think it's interesting, just to talk to someone that, again, from such a polarized environment, and you decided to just be like, well, that's not who I am, kind of thing. um I want you to talk a little bit more about your experience, and the challenges as it was with not being accepted for who you are, especially as it relates to your, choosing to be with women, or your lifestyle in that regard. And
Hmm.
I mean, it got really, really dark, at some points in terms of your relationship, to somewhere it was not, reconciled with your mother even.
Right.
But tell me a little bit about. I'm more interested in understanding what you experienced then and how it even translates to your, to where you are today, and how you were able to, still navigate with that, with those feelings rooted in you.
Hmm. Um, back during that time, if you made the decision, you didn't make the decision to, have that lifestyle. You made the decision whether or not you were going to acknowledge that that's who your true self was.
Exactly.
Um, because it was not the popular decision then.
Yeah.
I remember many nights. For a while, I lived on Avondale, which is one street off Westheimer,
Mm-hmm.
what was then the gay ghetto of Montrose, when it was,
Mm.
that's what it was thought of as, the gay ghetto.
Wow.
And you would walk down the street, and you know all the kids from all of the outlying neighborhoods would come in on the weekends to look at all the freaks and drive up and down Westheimer. I mean, there would be a traffic jam of people driving up and down Westheimer just to,
Wow. Just to
yell
look
out the
on.
windows and throw bottles at the freaks,
Mm.
walking up and down the street. So, you know, anyone deciding to live their true selves at that point knew that you were
The
setting
risk.
yourself up for heartbreak,
Yeah.
disapproval, and possible physical violence.
Yeah.
Um, you know, um, and it was a daunting decision. And I think whenever someone lives through that type of period,
Mm.
and then of course AIDS came along,
Mm.
which in the beginning was called GRID, gay related infectious disease. Um,
Wow.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, that's what it was called before it was called HIV or AIDS, was GRID, um, because it was considered only a gay disease,
Yeah.
as retribution and punishment from God, and
Wow. Yeah.
all that
Yeah.
stuff. I think when anyone decides that that is what living their truth is going to entail,
Yeah. Yeah.
it carries over into all facets of your life in the future of, I can get through anything.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know, I can
Yeah.
truly get through anything because I've sacrificed safety, love, acceptance to be my true self. And
That's
so,
beautiful.
uh, what you got?
That's actually very beautiful. I love
You
it.
know,
I love it.
what you got?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate and even today, a lot of people making that decision are still faced with that. It's
Yeah.
not as prevalent today as it
Right.
was back then, but making that decision is never easy, even if you're
Yeah.
surrounded by a family that is loving and accepting, because
Yeah.
that's not always going to be the case, out in the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's beautiful. I mean, honestly, it gives me a new perspective about that, the movements and things that I had seen prior to it becoming a lot more the norm as far as people coming out. But, when it was just such an uproar about and from a civil rights space.
Hmm.
But that piece alone, just understanding that, you know, if I am choosing this, then it's because I have thought about and weighed out all of the risk and all of that comes with it. So I am ready for the world, and it now
Hmm.
it gives me an appreciation for, the flamboyancy that comes with it. And when I say that, I mean all of it. Like I mean as far as the pride and the confidence and it's that definitely gives me perspective. So definitely gives
Yeah,
me
yeah.
perspective. So
And a lot of that, I think, is born out of that confidence of, yeah, I said I am who I am.
yeah, now which yeah.
So, look at this,
I
look at
get it.
me. Yeah.
Exactly.
So what else can
Yeah,
you do to me? So just
exactly.
watch this, have a seat and watch this.
And watch me be, right? And
Yeah,
that's,
yeah.
yeah. And there's so many of these types of prejudice and discriminations that need to be broken down like this because we see
Mhm.
things at face value without really understanding the roots issue or the heart of all of it so that because it's always from a human space. I just want to be loved and respected and taken care of and felt belong and all of that. We all have the same innate desires, but all of these broken up sects of issues or
Mhm.
they all again all rooted the same way, but it's important that we get an opportunity to dig deep to understand how they all are born. You
It
understand what I'm saying?
is.
It's like again, this is new for me. Like I never that little nugget that you shared with me about just if I can make this choice, then the rest of my life is I can be just as bold about because this is it for me. That says
Mhm.
everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely commend you for being able to do that during the time. um, but as it relates to your parents, do you believe that how does that being part of your roots, how have you found the space of happiness and love despite that being a part? I mean I imagine it's just something that still is a part of you. How do you continue to choose happiness and love despite that very dark place that was there as part of your life at
Yeah.
one point?
So, yeah, it took me, as I talk about in the book, it took me 21 years to find my birth mother.
Mm.
Um, and that's because she's Navajo. My entire family still lives on the reservation in the high desert Four Corners area of Arizona, where life is bleak, bleak. Let me tell you, bleak. Um, we in the U.S. talk about third world countries and how we need to go and help these people. And let me tell you what, you got a third world country on every Native American reservation in this country.
Wow.
It is a third world country on every reservation.
Wow.
It's the conditions are horrendous, horrendous.
Mm.
I mean, there are still so many homes that have no running water, no electricity on the reservation, and that's how the inhabitants have lived for generations, and they think
Yeah.
nothing about it. Absolutely nothing about it.
Yeah.
Um, it's the craziest thing. But when I did find um, my birth mother in 2016,
Hmm.
it explained so, so, so many things about who I am at my very core. At my very core.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I started from a place of strength, um, perseverance, uh, uh, just absolute bullheadedness to not give in
Right.
to whatever was going on. Um,
Yeah.
because my mother, as a very young teen, was sent to one of the residential schools that are, so much in the news right now, where Native kids were sent and were immediately, their hair was cut. They were forbidden to speak their own language, because the schools were to not really educate them, because they really didn't think that they had the brain bandwidth to learn true,
Ah, mm, yeah,
educational things,
yeah, that's
history,
common.
English, yeah,
Yeah.
mathematics, things like that.
The same narrative across all colored people, people of color
Exactly.
groups. Yeah, the brain capacity.
Ex- right,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Mm.
it was they were sent to the schools to basically save their lives by beating the Indian out of them,
Oh yeah.
beating the blackness out of them, beating
Yeah.
the,
Civilizing them.
insert,
Mhm.
yeah, insert, you know, culture here.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And she was sent with her youngest sister,
Mm,
and had never spoken English. English was not spoken in their home.
yeah.
They grew up. They were growing up in a traditional Hogan dirt floor, one room Hogan, where their only source of light was a stove that they cooked on, and I mean it was just primitive.
Yeah.
But got put on a bus, got off, was told you don't get off until it stops in Oklahoma at the school,
Yeah.
and thrown into this place where nothing was familiar. She couldn't even speak her own language, had to learn English, which,
Wow.
I mean, how do you even do that?
Yeah.
um, and the strength that it took to not only navigate that for herself but also for her youngest sister, and to come out of that and to be placed into a job with a white family raising their kids, insert culture here.
Wow, my
People
goodness.
of color raising
Yeah.
raising white
Yeah.
babies,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Ah,
to be able to help her sister navigate out of that, and to make her way until she was almost 30 years old out in that world,
yeah.
um, is just is awe inspiring to me,
Yeah, absolutely.
that she had the strength to do that and to navigate that,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
live through it and to become the strong, intelligent woman that she became.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
she went back to the reservation at about 30 years of age to take care of her parents because they were starting to get very ill.
Mm.
But back on the reservation, she went to work in the school system, and was actually one of the founding members on the reservation who went out and sought the funding to open Dene College, which is now the first 4-year university on a reservation for Native
Wow.
Americans. Yeah,
Beautiful.
and
Yeah,
her
beautiful.
granddaughter, my niece, is one of the big head honchos there,
Oh my goodness. I love
and
this.
raises millions and millions of dollars every year for Native students and for community outreach and things like that. And that is all coming from the strength of my mother.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. And knowing that you are part of that lineage, part of that bloodline is just, I would imagine just as empowering as can be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Now that I'm spending more and more time with the family, and my mother has come to Houston and stayed in our home. After her first visit, she was here with us for a month, and my wife just kept saying, uh, "It's this just explains so much.
She said what?
this this just explains so much, so
Well, even
much."
for her, you're like, who are you telling? How amazing is that? So even she is like, I understand now my wife better. I
Yeah,
understand where all
like
this comes from.
everything makes sense now. Everything makes
That is
sense.
beautiful. That is beautiful. Your chapter, you have a chapter here called The Hate and Hurt. Actually, I might have paraphrased that, but I wrote it down that way, the Hate and Hurt chapter. And all I put in parentheses was unbelievable. And that chapter was the pivotal point for me because when I wanted to ask you, I came up with this phrase, freedom at the cost of great. loss, you know. I mean, you gained freedom, but it cost you a lot, you know,
Mhm.
especially these two parents that reared you and loved you the best they could. But it was this a point of rebirth for you to some degree? Or at what point, rather, would you say, if at all, you've experienced? Because in my mind, you've shaved off like at, you know, there's some point where you have let loose all the skin by rediscovering your roots, or by discovering your roots.
Mhm.
Is there a point where you experience a rebirth by being able to have this freedom and also getting connected with your roots?
I think there have been several rebirths.
That's fair. That's fair.
I think
That's
there have been
fair.
several,
Yeah.
but but I will tell you that, and I I go through this step by step in the book of when I did walk into the room where I was going to meet my mother for the very
Yeah.
first time, and I do that step by step. Um, that moment when I looked at her for the first time and I knelt down in front of her,
Yeah. Hmm.
you know, and she took her hands and she put them on both sides of my face. And of course,
Yeah.
tears were, streaming
Yeah.
down both of our faces. And she just looked me straight in the eyes and she said, my little
Mm.
girl,
Yeah.
I love
Mm.
you so much.
Yeah.
And at that moment, it's just kind of like everything made sense.
Mm.
You know? Everything made sense. The
Yeah.
hurt, the joy, the pain, um, it it just all congealed in that moment, and the bad parts went away and the good parts blossomed.
I
You
love
know.
it. That's beautiful. And I love that it's something that's happened as recent in your life now, that this just chapter of your life, you have those very recent memories of that connection with your mom that you get to experience. I mean, it gets to
Hmm.
just kind of envelope you, you know, whenever, and it's fresh, it's new, and it's part of the life you're living, which is apparently very beautiful, and I'm very happy for you. So, and it's now
Thank
that I
you.
know that it's not Jan, it's Mary. I'm just kidding, but that you have enjoyed quite a bit of time with Miss Mary Beth, and you
Yeah,
guys have built a
36
beautiful.
years
That's
this month.
amazing. I
36
love
years this month.
it. And I imagine she's been incredibly instrumental in this transition
Yeah.
for you. I mean, you definitely mentioned that in the book. And that's just incredibly important to have supportive partner, especially during tumultuous times like that. But
Yeah.
so tell me a little bit about are you experiencing your mom and Mary Beth having a relationship, and you know how is this family congealing? Because you know you tell the story and I'm thinking about this reservation of like hundreds of people. I'm thinking your family's like there's like a whole lot of. So how are you guys congealing now? What does that look like now?
It's the most amazing thing. When I talk to him on the phone, how's Mary Beth? Tell her
Oh,
we love her. My sister calls her sister. You know,
oh, I love it.
yeah. So it's. I mean, there never was a blink of an eye. There never was a,
Yeah,
a side look. There never was, discussion behind hands of.
yeah, yeah,
There
yeah,
was
yeah.
never any of that.
Beautiful,
And come
beautiful.
to find out, on both sides, on both, because I have met relatives from my father's side as well as my mother's side.
Hmm.
On both sides, there's a bunch of gay people.
Well, there you go.
I'm not the only one anymore.
How interesting is that, Shana? What a
There's lots
journey.
of gayness and happiness on
I
both sides, and
I love
nobody
it. Nobody
nobody even
cares.
thinks twice about it. It's just like,
They're just
yeah,
doing
yeah,
their business.
whatever.
Well, look at that. I was before getting on with you, I was just talking to my partner about you know, these journeys we go through. And when we're in it, we have no idea what lies ahead.
Right.
We have no idea the beautiful outcome or whatever, you know. And you
Hmm.
think about people who give up on life and all of that, but it's like when you think about this journey, and it's almost like, you know, depending on what kind of person you are, if you're religious, spiritualist, whatever, but there is this like, okay, you have sustained, you have passed all the tests, you have proven that you are, and to yourself ultimately, right? But you
Hmm.
are, you are a warrior in this world, in this place on earth, and this is the harvest. This is the return for you, because
It's true.
you basically, and this is the journey that I believe is inevitable for anyone. I don't care what your start is, if you have a silver spoon in your mouth, or if you are, whatever it is on the streets, but it's really
Hmm.
about sticking it through. And what I discovered from your story is that you took the time to pave and create your own path along the way. You were this individual, there's this happening and there's this happening. And Shauna was like, screw all of y'all and everything. I'm keeping my eyes straight ahead. But I think it's just really beautiful to see just how much the abundance of love and beauty that you're getting right now. And I only imagine it's going to amplify. I mean, you got this huge family that's going to start all of this newness for you. So
Yeah.
that's exciting. I mean, I'm excited for you. I'm kind of wanting to go see what I got out there.
Oh no, it is. It's true. It's been
Yeah.
incredible. But I'm
Yeah.
going. I'm going for a visit next month, and I
That's
can't wait.
beautiful.
It's
I love it. I love it. Well, let's talk. I'm going to conclude with just this. So I mentioned at the beginning, and before I even say that, I want to let you know that your book was beautifully written. I'm not a reader.
thank you.
I'm just not a reader. I do listen to, like, I'll listen to a book, but reading is not because I have ADHD, and I normally read the
Hmm.
first line, and then I'm, like you said, or figuring out choreographing. That wasn't you, it was someone else that said
No,
they
no, no. That
choreograph.
is that
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 was
was
you.
me.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and
Like I got a whole thing going on.
that's why I read on this. That has
Yes.
solved, because I do love to read, but like you, I'll read, the first paragraph and I'm still reading, and I
Yes,
get
but you
to
got
the
something
next
else going on
chapter.
back.
Yeah, and it's like,
The
who the
comprehension
hell is
is
this
that.
person?
When
Where
did that happen?
where does she come from?
That is hilarious. The
And
duality
it's
of your
like,
brain.
she came back. She came in 10 pages ago. Once I go back, and it's like, look at that.
Oh, I love that.
This has solved it. All I have to do is I have to read the screen of my phone,
Yeah.
and then I go up a few more lines. It's
That's what
changed
I
my
that's
life.
what I did. But your book, it was your book. It kept my attention. I
Oh, well,
I
thank
love
you.
you wrote it so beautifully, and it was so candid, and so I definitely enjoyed it. I'm going to get copies for my kiddos because I need them to hear about the struggle and the and the rise. That's all I ever want them to know about. There's going to be struggle, but there's also rise if you stay in the
There's
game,
going to be a
right?
rise. That's right. That's right.
Oh,
It's
that's
there.
right. So, with that being said, Lucra again is all about the abundant return. And, once we invest in ourselves, and sometimes that investment means simply staying in the game and to continue to believe in yourself and to continue to pour into yourself, to find and create a tribe. So you have like this tribe that you chose, and then you have that tribe that you truly belong to, which is beautiful. Um, but to surround yourself and to invest in the things that are going to help you to become beautiful, and then in return you get this beauty back, and you epitomize that. But I want to know from you, what does, when you think about your life, what does lucra mean to you as it relates to your experience and all?
Hmm. Girl, it is a choice every day, every minute, every hour.
I love it.
Uh, yeah, all of these amazing things have happened in my life. But I've suffered from depression since it first kicked in when I was about 6. You
Mm,
know, anxiety. It's been there my entire life, and
mm.
I fought taking any type of medication, any type of help, until I was 50 years old. You know, 50 years old. That's crazy to do that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but even when it was at the darkest times, it was still the choice of, do I stay there, or do I get up and just do this much?
yeah,
And then maybe I'll feel like doing this much more. And, even with all of the wonderful things that have come to fruition in my life, I still have a mental illness.
yeah, yeah,
I have chronic depression. I have my entire life.
yeah.
I take my medication, you know, um, but I still make the choice when I'm in those depths of, do I stay there or do I do that one little thing
Yeah,
that's going
that
to,
breaks it.
yeah, break it,
Yeah.
get me up out of that. And then hopefully that's going to make me feel better. And I'm going to take that
Yeah.
very next step. But, that's what, to me, that's what Lucra is you keep striving, you keep making the choice to find the better.
Yeah, that's it. To find the better. And I was going to
Yeah.
ask you, what makes you keep going? What makes you say, nope, what is your moving target? What is your focus? What is your reason to keep going?
The ancestors are strong in me. I feel them every day. I feel it in my blood.
So they pushing. You don't have a choice. You think you have a choice, Shana, but you don't have a choice. You
I don't. I don't have a choice.
they're relentless. Oh, I love it.
My
That's
my my
beautiful.
91-year-old mother gets up every morning. She has to make a fire in her wood stove when it is 10
Wow.
degrees outside to get
Wow.
to get enough warmth in her house that she
Mm,
can, get on with her day.
yeah.
um, she gets up every morning and she does that. And there are mornings she doesn't feel good. Her body's 91 years old. Um, you
Yeah.
know, she makes that choice. She's living what little life is still ahead of her with happiness,
Yeah. I love it.
for the little that she has. So who am I to buck those ancestors and to buck that blood and go, oh, I can't.
That's too much.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. I so appreciate you. I'm so happy we had this moment to like truly connect because I believe in kindred spirits and anyone that my true belief is that the people that I attract are people like you that they have a story of perseverance, and they are badasses. So I just never got to know the depth of your badassery, but very happy to have been able to share this time with you. And if you would send me the link to your book, no, the link to your Amazon, to Amazon, so that I
Yep. Yep.
can I can share that as well.
Sure will.
And yeah, I want to get this out. And you're on Facebook and are you on Instagram anywhere else? Where are you
Yeah.
set up?
Facebook, Instagram. I'm on TikTok, but I'm a stalker.
Okay. Well, I want to know where the people can find you, not where you go find
they,
people.
they can find me on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, so send me those links and
I will.
then I'll get that attached to whatever I post. Hopefully I'll get this out by the beginning of the week. It was absolutely a
Okay.
pleasure wishing you and Mary Beth all the love, happiness, health. What is my saying? Health, wealth, and happiness.
There you go.
And keep being abundant in all that you give and receive. Thank you so much, Shauna. I appreciate you.
Thank you. This is great. Thanks.
Awesome. We'll talk soon.
All
Bye.
right, babe. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.